Hello and welcome to another episode of the Plus 63 HP podcast. I'm one of your hosts, John Clemente. Alongside with me is just one of my bestest best friends, Arnie. How are you doing?
Hello there. Doing great, man. Ready, ready, ready.
Yeah, we have a lot. It's March. The season of content is upon us. A lot of movies dropping, a lot of shows restarting. And this week we have two shows to discuss on our reviews program. If you guys don't know, on Mondays and Tuesdays, we drop one movie, one show, two shows, two movies. We deep dive into a couple of IPs and discuss if that particular episode of the movie is worthy of your time to watch. On Wednesdays, we drop our very first D&D campaign. So a couple of middle-aged guys decided to record their first campaign, put it on the interwebs for posterity, and we're having such a great time with that. On Thursdays, we have a curated list of clips, trailers, featurettes, short videos to react to, and we'll say whether we're hyped for that particular content or not. And then on Fridays, Chubax and RJ cannot have enough of D&D, so they spun off a second campaign where they are bad guys. But for this particular episode, we will be discussing the latest episode of The Last of Us season, episode 7, entitled "Left Behind." Before we get into spoiler territory and discuss the synopsis and what we think about it, Arnie, just non-spoilery review. What did you like, did not like about the or initial reactions for episode 7 of The Last of Us?
Well, it's a flashback, basically, episode. It's, uh, I heard the game and the mall nostalgia. As somebody who, yeah, you and I went to the mall
Yeah,
in our high school years. Yeah, it was fun revisiting the four wonders of the mall. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. Yeah, this
but
is
pretty
one
much,
of
yeah,
those.
that's love that love.
Yeah, I think episode 7 coming from the very cliffhanger episode of episode 6 was a very strategic move to really extend the suspense of what had happened to Joel. And yeah, you're right. It's like one of those things
Uh-huh.
where we get a whole lot of backstory with a whole lot more backstory with Ellie, how she grew up. We get an insight of
Uh-huh.
what it is to be growing up as a kid in the QZ, who people that have never experienced the before times, um, young friendship, young
Uh-huh.
love, and yeah, the mall, just like being young. Youth is kind of like, how youth can still
Uh-huh.
happen in a post-apocalyptic world is always fun to discuss, and just like very interesting too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I don't think any one of us in the past maybe over 2 decades, have been in a mall regularly, right? Like, I don't know, like
Uh-huh.
with Amazon,
Just to hang out.
yeah, just but also just like
Yeah.
malls aren't our places anymore. We don't do arcades. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
maybe movies. That's about it. So, it's nice to, like, particularly living in New
Yeah.
York.
If your mall has a yeah, yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
particularly here in New
If
York,
your mall
there.
has a movie
Yeah.
theater, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. Like here in New York, we don't have a lot of like these strip malls where it's kind of like the center where kids go, or at least families
Uh-huh.
go for everything. So it was nice to see how, I've been seeing tweets about how that mall looks like every single mall that we grew up in when we were 11, 12, 13 years old. So it was nice.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. So with that, we're gonna go through a little bit more of. We're just gonna run through the synopsis real quick, and then we'll discuss what we like, what we didn't like about the episode's themes. Arnie, who hasn't played the game, I, who have played the game, even this DLC Left Behind, what we thought about it, and with two more episodes left, it's going to be extremely exciting. The last two episodes, so.
Uh-huh.
Episode 7, Left Behind, released February 26th, written by Neil Druckmann for television. Of course, he made the video game, directed by Lisa Johnson. The Left Behind is also the same title of the DLC, um, where this particular episode was based. So this DLC was a little bit of a backstory of Ellie and Riley, her friend, the person that she got bit with at the mall. They have a comic tie-in as well, and it happens. This flashback happens in between or during the time where Joel was injured after episode 6, where they found the Colorado Firefly um headquarters, and then they were attacked by some vagabonds. This is kind of the place where the game, the DLC, also the episode starts. But essentially, Ellie and Joel find an abandoned house to shelter in. Joel is closing death, like he was
Mm.
deeply stabbed in the stomach. And Joel urges Ellie to just leave him because like there's nothing they can do. They don't have a lot of anything, whatever. And then we see that Ellie, they show that Ellie was leaving, presumably to leave Joel for good, but as she opens the door leading to inside the house and then outside the place, um she remembers her time in Fedra military school where she attended with her best friend Riley. Ellie was like causing trouble with her friend, or she was being bullied. She was got into a fight. She had a black eye, but luckily the person that she fought with had worse. She had stitches. Um, at that point, Ellie gotten to talk to by one of the commanders there, one of the QZ lieutenants, on what Ellie could be. Like, it's a good pitch that, despite all of the lack of Fedra, they're the only ones that keeping people fed, keeping people safe. So Ellie could be part of that organization where she could be the person scooping poop, or she could be person leading the people that are scooping poop. So she had something to think about. But at that night, Riley, her best friend that was away for 3 weeks already, presumably dead, came back, coaxed Ellie to go with her. After some banter, they Riley brought Ellie to an abandoned mall. Said mall was uh like not working until Fedra turned on a certain section of that place. Like they turned on another housing unit near the area, and then turning on the lights in that housing unit led to the mall being turned on as well. So they were there. Riley was um, taking Ellie through different wonders of the mall, as you've mentioned. Initially four, it became five when it started with electric stairs. There was Mortal Kombat, which is a callback from episode 3 about that they also had a photo
Photo.
booth, right? Where we can see one of Ellie's most prized possession, a faded photo of her and Riley. Um, and they have a lot of conversation about why Riley left, why Riley left, how she got into the Fireflies, how she was recruited, and where she was going to go. She was going to be assigned to the Atlanta station, so that was her last night. That's why she wanted she wanted Ellie to have this wonderful, nice memory of them together. They kind of share a kiss, which is kind of fun.
Mm.
Uh, where it was Ellie who initiated the kiss with Riley, but it was the feeling was mutual and it was great. They proceeded to the last wonder, which was kind of like a Halloween um place. And then they got attacked by one infected
Mm.
who bit both Ellie and Riley. And that was where the episode ends, or at least that flashback ends. It's kind of nice that we didn't see what happens after. We just can kind of infer. And
Mm.
then back to the present, we go back to the cut where Ellie was like opening the door, presumably to leave, but no, she opened the door. She went into the house, tried to find anything to help Joel, and she finds a sewing kit, like a sewing needle and some thread, and she begins to stitch Joel's wound, and that's where the episode ends. So Arnie, back to you. Thoughts and feelings about episode 7 of The Last of Us.
I mean, yeah. Well, compared to the other episodes prior to this, I mean, it's still heartbreaking because it's
Mm.
the loss of young love,
Mhm.
basically loss of innocence for Ellie as well.
That's true.
But it's not like as was much of a sucker punch to the gut like with Henry and Sam or with the Bob and Frank, or it's not as you know it's still hard, but
Mm.
but we already knew that that her young love died or something
Mhm.
like that. But it's a little bit more of the backstory of Ellie, which explains why she is who she is. I mean, she's always been rough, but you could imagine kids growing up in that situation probably has to grow up real fast, um, especially if you're being bullied in your school. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the mall scene. I mean, yeah, it's just a nice. I was smiling because we've done stuff like that back in high school.
Mhm.
Like the photo booth we had. I don't know, for people who are too young to remember, we've had this thing called neoprints before that
The
we
tiny, tiny sticker photo.
tiny stamp sized photos where we yeah, when we buy it and then we if there's like five photos of it, we share it amongst five people, and of course it just fades and all that stuff. I think I still have some of them hidden somewhere, but yeah, it's very hard to distinguish because the ink did fade. That's why when they that's a good detail that they had, that when the photo printed, it was faded, because yeah, you could imagine the ink either broke
Mhm.
down or faded in the
Yep.
past 20 years.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so and of course escalators, we've done the same thing. Arcades, all it's missing is the billiard table and a bowling alley, and
Bowling
it's
alley.
basically our mall
Mhm.
uh, growing up. So yeah, it was a fun ride, and it's tragic but then again, Ellie deciding to try to patch up Joel is basically her taking on the leadership role, and yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
I was it was a perfect timing because I actually got my scanner
Mm-hmm,
Thursday, because I ordered a photo scanner for my taxes, and documenting, or just like creating copies of my tax documents and stuff like
mm-hmm,
that. But I also got it because for my vacation over the holidays, I brought a bunch of old photos. So I'm very
mm,
excited to start just scanning random stuff and just like posting weird things on the interwebs. But yeah, you're right. It's like a lot of the photos that I brought back are from high school. And then
mm,
the good thing about this episode is, yeah, it is truly the loss of innocence, which is just saying that these kids growing up in the QZ never had innocence to start, or their innocence is quite different than what we thought about.
mm-hmm,
And then trying to regain it back by just being kids, playing in the mall, being
mm-hmm,
with friends, and just loving your best friend, being with your best friend. It's kind of like a nice warm hug in between all of the really rough episodes that we've seen the entire season.
mm-hmm,
But on theme, every episode there's a giant loss. Like we didn't see
mm-hmm,
it on camera this time, like Riley turning and presumably dying.
mm-hmm.
um but the idea of it is like you had it's the best night of Ellie's life was,
Also the worst
right?
night.
Yeah, it was also the worst night, but it's also the idea of it's a good uh it's a good episode where we see a lot more of the philosophies behind Firefly and Fedra. Like
Mm-hmm,
Ellie was saying, like Firefly was just like bombing people, etc., etc. And then Riley was saying that Fedra is has some favoritism, or a lot of people have no future there. She was turning 17, she was assigned poop duty. And so
Uh-huh.
that was going to be what her life was going to be there, rest of her life. So that's why she ran away. Um, so I like the idea that they're showing different sides, where some sides may have some good, some sides, both sides have good, both sides have bad.
Uh-huh.
Um, Portions of them. So it's it's not only just Ellie and her backstory, but it's a little bit more context on Fedra, a little bit context on Firefly. Um, and yeah, and then you're right at the end. Like I think this was placed behind because in the previous episode Ellie was saying like everybody that she cared for either has died or has left her, and this is one of her times where like no, she wasn't gonna let Joel die,
Uh-huh.
so you know she bucked up. Luckily, found suing Kit to so Joel. But we will see where it happens in the next episode how things will progress. But yeah, this is one of those nostalgia, young love, all of the things that we'd expect preteens to be or like teens to be experiencing in a kid. I guess the takeaway there is like regardless of the situation, it will endure. It's just a little bit different, but kids will find happiness, kids will find love, kids will find friendship. All right. So with that, I know it's closer to the end. What are your final
Uh-huh.
thoughts and rating on episode 7 of The Last of Us? I'm gonna write this down for Chubax as well.
I'll rate it as a 9. Again, the 9 is basically pushed up by the nostalgia for the mall, and then basically just Ellie maturing from a girl who's angry at the world to all of a sudden I know what loss feels like. Because they also mentioned that Riley had suffered losses, like she actually saw her family
Yeah,
die,
that was nice
uh,
touch too.
or,
It's like, oh, I
or
forgot that.
became infected. Yeah, but with Ellie, I don't know, maybe her mom died at childbirth, so she never really experienced loss, and then this gave her that loss, and which explains why she got really attached with Joel eventually, as soon when they spent so much time together, and which explains why she decided to try to patch him up. I mean, and I'm sure in Fedra she probably learned how to sew wounds and all that, so there's like basic first aid. Um, you know, and as somebody who's a healthcare professional, I mean, yeah, you still need some antibiotics because you never know. We still got infected, but it's I let that go because hey, it's post-apocalyptic world, Plus, yeah,
I
but
said
yeah,
that or nothing.
it's either yeah, it's better than not closing up the wound, right? So yeah, so let's do that. So, but yeah, I like this episode. It's basically the breath before the jump because I think I heard from the next two episodes will be very very intense as well. So we'll see.
100%. Yeah, so I was gonna do the same. I was gonna I it's one of the weaker nines only because it's not because it's bad. It's just because I've been seeing comments on the Twitter sphere saying that, oh, this was a filler episode. No, this was not a filler episode, but it is strategically placed to really extend the suspense, right?
Hmm.
So they could have done this like the game, it was
Yeah.
after the first game too, but I just felt that comparatively to the other amazing episodes that we've done, of course this doesn't kind of like measure up, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
but again, the nostalgia hits different, and then
Hmm.
being able to find different levels of love, like we've seen partners, like
Hmm.
we've seen father and daughter, episode 1. Episode 2 is partners, like boyfriend and
Hmm.
girlfriend.
Hmm.
Episode 3 is husband and wife or husband and husband.
Hmm.
Episode 4 is another brother. And
Uh-huh.
episode 4 and 5 is both of them are brothers, like brothers from Kathleen, brothers from
Mm,
Henry. And
yeah.
then, episode 6 is a different sort of family, like a new
Mm,
community. And now we see kids. So I
yeah.
like that we're seeing the entire world post post infection, right? That
Uh-huh.
it still endures, it still loves. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna give it, but it's still great, but it's like, again,
Yeah.
it's one of the weaker nines that I
Yeah.
would put.
People who think this is a filler episode, they need to watch anime and actually learn what a filler episode
The
is.
real filler episode is that last a million,
A million years.
yeah, one punch can be 8 episodes.
Hmm. And then after the story arc, there's like 10,000 filler episodes, and then they ramp up again. So it's kind of like, no. Yeah.
All right. With that, we are closing this very quick episode of our reviews episode in behalf of our other brother Chubax, who is in vacation right now, deservingly so. We'll
Hmm.
continue on chugging along making content for y'all's. So with that, last goodbye, Sarni.
Well, goodbye and see you next time.
Goodbye and see you next time as well. And thanks for watching the video. Bye.
Bye.